And now, without further ado, I'm very pleased to present our first speaker of the day, Wang Söderström. I'm just going to read a short text, and then we're going to do some technical featuring. Yeah. So, occupying the liminal realm between physical and digital, Copenhagen-based um, Copenhagen-based studio Wang Söderström's ever-growing, ever-shape-shifting body of work seeks to describe and give form to an entanglement of power structures and perspectives. In their new, hot-off-the-press book, Royal Chambers, Wang and Söderström posits an expanded idea of home, of care and connection, from micro to macro, to shine light on a more integrated and nuanced notion of life and living. Here at the Tangle, the duo will deep dive into their multisensory visions of the future. So please welcome Annie and Tim.
So, yes, I'll need to mute here. So, maybe?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for the patience here. And thanks Post Design Festival for having us today and actually having us again, because last time we spoke during this festival was in 2017. And it's wonderful to be part of the festival again. And that was 6 years ago, which feels both very much like yesterday, but also very much far away. We're going to talk about how our practice has grown since this almost 7 years ago. So my name is Annie Wang, and this is
Team Söderström.
And we formed the duo Wang and Söderström. As Peter mentioned, we are based here in Copenhagen, and but we are originally from the neighboring country, Sweden. We are going to talk about more in depth in our practice today and the questions that currently occupy our brains. We're also going to deep dive in our latest project called Royal Chambers, which is a self-initiated project with a goal to collaborate with others. And it resulted in an exhibition and continued to unfold itself as a printed book. But let's rewind to 2016, which is the year me and Tim founded our studio. We have a background within architecture and spatial design, but as you can see on the screen here next to me, we work exploratively and across mediums to better understand how technology affects our senses and our body and explore a different way to interact physical and digital mediums. So our works could result in both sculptures, visual imagery, and to spatial installations. Last couple of years, we've been occupied also in investigating how digital technologies and materials and living things, how they, the relationship between them. And working in this intersection between physical and digital is a way for us to explore and understand what it means for us humans and our senses, as technology will be more and more integrated in our lives.
Yeah, and in the earliest years of our studio, we were constantly struggling to define ourselves. We wanted to, because we had this spatial background, but now we had found this new 3D software love. We were doing animations one day, sculptures the next, but also spatial installations and that the third day. And it felt maybe like, or we were thinking like, maybe are we watering out this? Shouldn't we just focus on one thing and be really good at that? So we asked ourselves that question, why don't we focus on one thing? And that's when we realized that probably has something to do, or like being in between these different fields and more specifically between digital and analog, probably has a lot to do with our upbringing, that it's something that stems from our upbringing. Because me and Annie, we are part of a generation that remembers the floppy disk as something else than a save icon. And our home phones had cords, they were stuck to the wall. And we were there when digitalization really took off. And we literally grew up with technology at our fingertips. And maybe most importantly, we felt this merge, or like we felt this when the physical objects became this much more abstract digital cloud thing that it is today. That is a picture of me, by the way, working on my amazing posture at a young age. Yeah, so when we were teens growing up with this technology, we had computers at home, but all the software was super expensive, or we didn't know about it. It was for the bigger companies, or like, and yeah, and it wasn't at all this amazing open source thing that it is today. Although internet piracy was really nice. We don't remember how, but suddenly we knew how to download all these things, and downloading it was almost the fun part. But we got access to these different software, and we could recreate the things that we liked. So doing album covers or something in Photoshop for music we made in Fruity Loops. Remember even trying to make a game. But back then there wasn't like this world of tutorials that is today, no YouTube full of tutorials. So we kind of, like you do as when you're a kid, I guess, like just clicking around in the software. And I think that kind of hardwired our brains to function in this 3D software landscape, or not 3D back then, but like computer software landscape. And basically we dared to mess around in the software, even though it looked scary and complicated at first glance.
Yes, and it was during our university studies where we discovered 3D software in particular, which quickly became the fundamental part in our toolbox. When we started our studio back in 2016, we were actually mostly hyped over being our own bosses, but we were also mesmerized over the possibilities that the 3D software offered, that you could break all the physical rules and you get direct feedback from the visual renderings. Yeah, so we were basically messing around with it like we were kids again. But after a while navigating in this new space as professionals or as practitioners, especially on YouTube, we realized how digital technology is influenced by the few and how much the digital technology is so intertwined in our daily life. The digital realm, we feel, has huge potential, but is today usually catered for consumption and efficiency or power, rather than something that could be in symbiosis with our bodies, our senses, and the planet, which slowly helped us understand our role as creative practitioners. We wish to throw out pre-existing conventions regarding the digital and activate a digital sensuality, to give the digital a more human relatable quality where we could challenge what the digital can mean and what digital can look like.
Yeah, and it is within this new and unknown territory, like where new hybrids can emerge, or that's what we believe, and where we are all together able to influence how we want to experience technology in the future as well. And rather than letting technology dictate that for us, because how we think about technology shapes how we build and how we use it.
Yes, and as humans, we are inherently sensory. We are all emotive beings. So as society progresses into the future, the technology and the impact of it on different aspects in our lives will continue to increase. So the challenge for all of us is how to combine technological advancement with fundamental sensual qualities. And this phenomenon called synesthesia, which is an phenomenon that produce sensory impression related to one sense and transfer it to another sense. And a light version of synesthesia could be as easy as how some people relate the color red to hot or the color blue to cold. But 4% of the population have synesthesia as a condition, where they usually mix senses, like they could hear or they can see colors when they hear music or see colors when they read a text, for instance. And we are interested to see how we can explore this synesthesia and mixing senses when coming to applying this to experiencing technology.
Yeah, okay, so now we have a little poll, actually. We're gonna try to sense the world together. And we're gonna try to see how this works. So everyone's gonna bring up your phone, if you happen to have a smartphone.
And we have 3 questions we're going to ask you and see.
Yes, okay, and the first question is say a classic question. Which sense is the most important to you? And then I think if you're in the back, I think you can zoom a little bit with the camera and the QR code. Yeah, that's what
Or
you're gonna
maybe-
aim at.
And follow the link. You just use your regular camera app and hover. Otherwise, if you can't reach it, go to slido.com and then join the hashtag number.
Does it work for
But preferably
anyone?
the QR is faster.
It worked? Yeah.
And then, yeah,
Wait
everyone
a little
answer
bit.
your... Yeah, maybe you try.
I see. Oh, yeah, I should try also.
Okay, have everyone picked their answer?
We have already written down the notes, what we thought would happen. So
Yeah.
if it's gonna be another result, then we have to improvise.
freestyle the text. But let's see.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So we wrote down smell.
No.
No, we didn't. We wrote down sight. Yeah, and perhaps that is not a surprise that the majority of us choose sight. I just want to see what was the other thing? Hearing, right? Yeah, 6% touch.
Yeah. You basically reflect this cross-section surveys made in UK by adults
in 2019, I think, and there you could see a similar result as ours. That sight was definitely the most valued one. Yeah.
Followed by hearing.
And that survey also showed that people would even choose 4.6 years of perfect health over 10 years of life if they had complete sight loss. So that's
So people rather live shorter life with perfect health than 10 life without sight.
Rather half their life. Yeah. So this would perhaps apply to us in the room as well. This group of people may be especially since many of us are working or studying within visual design and I dare to say that probably most of us live a very big part of their life online as well, and you almost experience all of that with your eyes.
Yes. Yeah, because most of our experience with technology is limited to audio or visual interactions. And as mentioned before, with the phenomenon of synesthesia, our brains are pretty good in adding other senses together while we perceive and sense our world, because senses never work fully independently. You can probably recall how a strawberry feels and tastes by just looking at the picture of it. But which path does that lead us? Sight being so dominated in our virtual worlds might make us forget about other senses and disconnecting us even more from the physical world and disconnecting us from others, especially our local surroundings and local network. And
yes, a new question. So that's when was the last time you hugged a tree? And if it was this morning, you have to choose this last month.
yes, was it last month, last year, last decade, or way back, or perhaps never done it at all? You have to bring up the camera phone again or start over to
Yes,
do
start
the
over.
QR. Everyone done? Yes. Let's see the results. Okay.
Nice. Nice.
I was so sure that people had last decade at least, or
Yeah, but here we didn't write down anything about it, but that's nice. Last year, that's nice. I did it. If I would have answered this last week, it would have been way back. I couldn't remember, but of course we're writing this down. So I went out and and it was kind of fun. It was I wasn't sure how to approach it. Like I didn't want to be too yeah. But and I also was super afraid that anyone would see me actually. But then yeah.
but actually happy that people choose last year. I mean, it's a quite mix, but for me it was last decade at least. And we're gonna talk about the
But I can just add, it's still that was 33%, and the other was last decade or way back or never done it,
Huh?
and some last month as well. Okay, so almost 50-50. Cool. Yeah, and I'm gonna quote Professor Banassi of University of Bristol, and he said, "Touch is one of our most overlooked senses. We rarely take notice of it, but we rely on it every day of our lives to help us connect with those around us." And it continues a bit. Even the briefest touch, like a gentle pat on the shoulder or a handshake, can profoundly impact our emotions and decision-making processes. These subtle forms of touch can influence a range of social behaviors, like building trust and promoting cooperation. Okay, so we have a last question on a similar note.
similar options.
And we mean letter, not a shopping list.
Yeah, we mean
It
a
should be-
real letter, longer communication there, not a shopping list or just a note you make. Pen. Yeah, yeah. Just the
Sure.
action of.
Yeah, yeah. Good question, but for sure.
Yeah. Was it this month, this year, last decade, way back, or never done it? I'm actually really curious if someone here never done it, because I don't know how young, if there are really young people here that go to school. In our youth, we did like essays and wrote school assignments on pen and paper, and we also had pen pals back then.
But we know that Denmark and Sweden, we come from Sweden, are some of the absolutely most digitalized schools in the world. And it's actually also a big, you hear about it in the radio. How are they going to continue going that path, or are they going to go back a bit, introduce pen again? Yeah, it's a discussion. Yeah. Yeah, sure.
You can still vote.
I think you can still vote. Yeah, that's what I answered as well. And I'm not even sure if it was last decade, but I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, imagine that was our main way of communicating before.
Yeah, I think if we would do the same question again in 10 years, it would be the last option, much more.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yes. So, and a little bit like, there's another professor here. But there are clear indications that the hand is starting to occupy less of our brains. And this according to Göran Lundberg, who is a professor at Lund University, and he is also a very, what do you call it, forefront hand surgeon. And he refers to studies that show that the decrease of tactile interaction and fine motor activities, like writing, for the hand, or like the decrease for the hand, is really changing our brains. And textureless smartphones, digital tools, minimal designs, like door handles being as minimal as possible. A lot of door handles also disappearing. that is taking our hands further and further away from the rich stimuli and physical interaction that it has been used to.
Yeah, and digital technology is here to stay. So how can we ensure to bring haptic and tactile features into the future? We ask, me and Tim. We don't have the answer, but we are very curious to explore this theme. And how can objects and spaces surrounding us stimulate our senses more? And can digital experiences help enhance the rich physical world instead of pushing us away from it? And these topics we are actually able to explore more because we got invited to teach a course in Karlsruhe in Germany at the University of Arts and Design. And together with students, we will explore the future of multisensory digital future. And we are also currently working on a piece with the same theme, which is a combined VR and physical piece for the Danish Biennale this month or autumn.
Yeah. So, yeah, after 5 years as a studio, where we have one of our main things we work with is doing a lot of commercial 3D animation, whose main objective really is to be eye-catching. That was something that enabled us to start our studio. That is something we enjoy to do and gonna continue doing. But these topics that we got into, like they really started to grow inside us. Now when we are also part of doing this dominating eye thing, we really wanted to investigate that more. But we felt that we never really got the chance or the time to dive into that properly. So we decided to make a much more actively, to reach out to other people much more actively, other people and other platforms, that maybe that way we could find room for this, a project that could, yeah.
We're learning to be the initiator and learning to be part of something bigger where you actually get challenged as a practice because you have to like
Yeah.
say what you think and try to mirror yourself in others.
Yeah, that's learning is a really good word, like really learning to be part of something bigger, as you said, and part of something together with others.
Yeah, so we also got a haircut, I see, from the picture. But yeah, we initiated a project that has taken the form of an exhibition and book called Royal Chambers. And this exhibition was shown in Copenhagen last November and will travel to Gothenburg, Sweden later this month. Here we actually got the time and we made space to deep dive and explore our relation towards technology and as emotive beings and also as part of an ecosystem on this planet. And we did that through two main topics. And that was a question of what our relation to home is during the rapidly changing phygital world, and the complicated fact that technology is part of nature, our collective home.
Yes. So as Annie says, the project Royal Chambers is about home. And it started out in a time when me and Annie went through a lot of changes in our life, which in different ways changed the way we looked at life and how we perceived life, and then what is home, kind of, and making this topic really close to our hearts. I received new non-organic body parts, officially becoming a cyborg. Pretty cool. We moved to a new place and became responsible for a garden, and we became parents to a new human being. And all of this gave us daily encounters with new life, changing how we think about our home.
Yes. But we also felt a bit lost, all this new responsibilities and new ways of exploring life. And we needed some guidance. We looked at life forms that act in binary ways, such as ants and viruses. Perhaps they could provide clues and keys on how to navigate in a world where the digital is evolving into something as complex as life itself.
Yes, so I'm going to read more quotes. I'm going to read some from a book called Ant Encounters by ant researcher Deborah M. Gordon. It's kind of fun, by the way, that we like have this life crisis and we search guidance with ants. So she writes that we live enmeshed in networks. The internet, a society, a body, an ant colony, a tumor, they are all networks of interactions among people, ants, or cells. Aggregates of nodes or locations linked by some relation. Local interactions are easy to see in ants. The local is all an ant knows. A colony operates without central control, based on a network of simple interactions. These are local by necessity, because an ant cannot detect anything very far away. So the power of networks is in their local connections. All networks grow, shrink, merge, or split, link by link. How they function and change depends on what forms or disrupts the connections between nodes. The internet dominates our lives, not because it's huge, but because each of us can make so many local links.
And the ant colony is often served as a metaphor for human and hierarchy, human order and hierarchy. But the queen ant doesn't have real power in the colony. She actually doesn't control the workers. Her main purpose is to sustain the colony by laying eggs in the so-called royal chambers, which is the cell where she spends her entire life to create life. And we have much to learn from this way the ants use interactions to solve problems without anyone in charge. Ants may provide innovate ideas for the systems that we create. They have evolved algorithms to use minimal information to regulate the behavior of large systems. For instance, no one is really in charge of the internet. However, we let the tech giants control us, much like they were royalties. And networks in nature show how the patterns of links at the local scale sets the options for stability and transformation. Almost everything that happens in life is the result of a network. Making or breaking local links is the way to make change. It is a comfortable thought me and Tim usually go to when we feel that the world's problem is too overwhelming. Because you can't change the whole network at once, perhaps. But by small local links, you can, link by link, break patterns.
Yes, so was a fundamental part in this project and also gave the name Royal Chambers. But another important part was this word, ecology. And ecology, which defines the study of the relationships between living organisms and its surroundings. Eco coming from the Greek word oikos, meaning house, and ology from logia, meaning the study of home. So ecology means the study of home. And that was minted by someone.
Coined.
Not
minted.
Minted, NFT. Coined by someone many of you know, I guess, Ernst Haeckel, the German zoologist, naturalist, philosopher, and artist that like kind of indexed the world with his illustrations like this. He's always been a big inspiration. And technology is the last field of a study to discover its ecology. Technology ecology is a term used to describe how technology interacts with other technologies, organisms, and the environment. Technology has become so interconnected with our lives and what shapes the planet. It is starting to behave more like an ecosystem than just freestanding technology. And by unfolding the term home and process the different scales of homes, we can perhaps better sense life, both virtual and offline, in a broader context. We must learn to live with the world rather than seek to dominate it. In short, we must discover an ecology of technology.
Whether we like it or not, our lives are both physical and digital today. And that calls for speculative perspectives that can reevaluate our roles during this fast ecological and technological developments in order to establish which values are important to bring with us in the future. In our project here, we looked at these topics through the lens of home that might help us understand and relate better what our role as humans could be. And in the subtitle, Home as Host suggests that the planet is hosting us, humans, billions of life forms as well. And we, our body, are hosting billions of life forms as well on microbial level. Or the second part, host as home, suggests that much of our presence and belongings are today hosted on a web or in the cloud. And through a collection of 5 works we exhibited at Interpublic last November, where we investigated our relationship to the digital and environmental developments, our ecology of technology. And we will present briefly each work because we also want to present the book part. And so we might feel a bit rushed, but
Yeah, but the first work was a short animation film that takes us to Earth in a distant future, and it offers glimpses into how small life forms that have outlived humans adapt to this new planetary ecology, and they live and form homes and crawl around in the crust, which we people are creating now with all the synthetic materials and things that's really like creating this new crust on Earth called, or many call the technosphere. Yeah, and so what is toxic for one species could be a perfect habitat for another. And this one, which is called Wheel of Life, is a mixed media installation. It's hanging 12 screens like this. And it highlights the vulnerability with our digital presence. And in it, we follow a computer virus that's shaping form and kind of trying to navigate this wheel, trying to find a digital nirvana. And it's also a little bit play on how much alike actually computer viruses and biological viruses are, and that they can in fact affect each world. Yeah.
and we collaborated with the emerging tech lab at One, a Copenhagen-based practice. And this interactive installation titled Nest of You, we used real-time computer vision where the work mediates on the themes of machine learning, data, and ownership. The installation aimed to highlight the experience of what real-time data mining feels like. The work drew parallel between the power of technology giants and giant queen ants in the context of society's routine-based flows, which feeds these giants. And akin to a formicarium, those aquarium-like sliced where you see the ant grow, you can have them at home and stuff. We used the similar idea of where the visitor could feed their data and watch these digital insectoids thrive on a section of a nest, allowing us humans to see these otherwise invisible life.
Yes, and this one called Between Earth and Cloud, it's a sculptural installation, and it takes its point of departure in the ancient Chinese legend of the giant Pangu, who's this guy who's holding his egg, which is the yin, Earth, and yang, which is the sky, and he's like responsible for splitting this and creating the world. And when he dies, his decaying body becomes the world we live in. So his flesh becomes soil, hair, vegetation. His last breath became the wind, and the parasites that once lived on his skin became humans and animals. And there's a similar northern mythology. Now I don't remember the name, but it's similar in the northern mythology, how the world was created. And it kind of implies on this that the planet is hosting us, but that we're all like kind of living on a bigger organism as well. Yeah.
And the podium presenting the pango egg is separated in two parts that are almost this biological attraction and symbolizes this attraction to each other's, like earth and sky, host and parasite, and the analog and the digital. Our last work, titled Abiogenesis, was a digital printed image. And for as long as there have been machines and computers, there has been insects making home within and upon them, because they are, after all, warm and cozy, safe places. And here we see a rhizomatic structure, constellation of life forms in deep symbiosis with a computer. And while some of the structure are technological, this computer is not made to serve humanity. So, while we worked at this project, we also wanted to create something that could live on its own and beyond the exhibition. And yeah, so the project evolved into a physical book where we could include processes, but most importantly, invite other people to write essays about the theme of home from their perspective to add a more broader discourse.
Yes, and collaborating with artists really has been a great exercise. Maybe mostly to getting to know yourself and to know our practice better, because our practice is only me and Annie. And since you then also needs to be leading this project, you need to automatically explain and analyze your ideas all the time to make it happen, or to make it somewhat more understandable to the other persons that's working with you, and thereby you kind of create this yeah, you kind of make it more clear what you're going to create, also for mostly for yourself maybe. And this is the first time we have our works interplay with essays like this, and that has been extremely inspiring as well. And so in the book, the essays is placed in between different works. It's not that they necessarily are connected to one or the other, but it kind of really starts to create this other, which adds all those other layers and new meanings and open new doors to what the theme of home could mean.
And these are the contributing writers. And starting from left, yes, we contacted Oscar Salguero because of his unique archive of books on interspecies and his interest in getting away from the human-centric perspective. And we also contacted Yasaman Sherry because she has a long experience working within novel interfaces such as AR and VR equipment, yet she fuses biology and ecology in her work.
Yes. And we contacted Magdalena Rosenberg because of her interest into literature and her philosophical perspectives on human relations and also architecture within that context. And we contacted Jasmine Morris for her amazing democratic view on creative computing, and also she is fighting for accessibility within technology.
And lastly, we contacted David Zilberg because of his knowledge of food and fermentation and how that connects us both on a microbial scale and on a societal level. And we also wanted to give you a brief presentation of each essay of the book. And again, it is not like the essays are connected to a specific work, but acts independently, but also fluid links that ties the book as its own network. And in Oscar's essays, An Archive as Home Full of Holes, he described how bookworms creates interconnected worlds, much like the theory of wormholes in space. And that home transport through holes in our everyday life.
Yes, and in Yasaman's essay, she takes us to the microscopic perspective of life, and she explains how the microbial gaze lends us humans a way to seeing the world and sensing our surroundings on a more than human level. And yeah, so we first in space with wormholes and then in the guts with the microbes. But when we come to Magdalena's essay, we come back to the human scale. And she wrote this in mid-pandemic. She was living in a awful space, she says herself, but she tests this idea of a moving rhizomatic home, where the different portals we have at home really can shape our home into anything. And she goes into what that means. And in Jasmine's essay, she takes us through the World Wide Web. She even makes us dance with the mouse cursor at one point, literally. And she writes about how we entrust the magic cloud and that not all of us fit in the cyberspace yet.
Yes, and in David's essay, titled Home Cooked, he writes about how food is subjective and that the fact that anyone can yuck someone's yum is a testament to that. He guides us through different scales of ingredients, from lactic acid bacteria to Sardinian kazumatsu cheese and to hakral, a potent Icelandic dish of fermented shark. Taste was the first sense to evolve in the history of life on Earth, and is the prime among them as transporters, a vehicle for remembering and returning to all homes we have ever left and all the homes where we have ever been. We also collaborated with James Taylor Foster, a curator at ArcDes Museum. He, together with us, wrote the introduction text, has been mentoring us almost in this project in a way. The book also includes photography by David Stjernholm, a very known photographer here in Copenhagen. He takes a lot of art exhibitions here, and we also collaborated with a duo, Luke and Nick, to capture our studio and portrait. It is published by Stockholm-based Arvinius and Orfeus, and the graphic design is made by Kiosk Studio, a Copenhagen-based graphic design studio that I know many of you know as well. And to end this, with the project Royal Chambers, we want to expand the idea of home and the care of, and connection from micro to macro to shine light on a more integrated and nuanced notion of life and living. And the only way forward is together.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. We'll move on to questions from the audience, if there are any. Of course there is. Also, online audience, please go ahead and ask questions. Do I see any hands? Not yet. Okay. Oh, where? The light is so blinding.
Yeah, thank you very much for the very interesting talk. I wanted to know if you also collaborate with scientists or if you do your own research on those topics. Yeah.
We would love to do it more. I think it's maybe a known barrier between artists and scientists, and it's a very, both worlds are quite closed. Like it's a closed society there and closed community there, it feels like. We were a couple of years ago introduced in a project where we actually, designers were connected with scientists at in Sweden, and we collaborated with two nanowire scientists in the physics department at Lund University. And it's hard. I will actually admit it's hard to find the common, I don't know, goal in it. But I think if you find the perfect brief almost, where both part feels that they can contribute to the topic, I think that's a very goal collaboration that could really bring something new happen.
And I think that was it hard. Like then we are going into that project with the nanowires, for example, like very visually, and everything looks amazing if you zoom in 10,000 or 100,000 times at something, and like we kind of get stuck in this visual world, whereas they are more thinking about what can be done in 100 years and not really what we can produce now. Not 100 years, but they have like these long arcs, whereas we can, as designers, kind of want to solve things here and now, I guess, at least in our practice. But for example, with the hand thing, we reached out to this Göran Lundberg at Lund University, and that felt like a really good match because we are gonna go to this German school and teach students that works with graphic design. And there is like this super direct contact with a hand surgeon and someone that's working with graphic design. So in that way, that felt like a connection that really could work. And he was very interested, supporting, but he couldn't help us because he's old and because of medical reasons. So I think is something that really interesting, and part of this working with others, that's finding those good connections.
Thank you. Yeah.
I have I have a follow-up question. So your book, Royal Chambers, looks quite spectacular and quite effortlessly designed and like interwoven. How long has this project gone on? And like, can you tell us a bit about the like, yeah, the value of collaboration and how you collaborated with all these people, and maybe a bit about the mentorship. Like, how did you go about this? Like, when did you start?
So we went to the graphic designers. They were gonna help us make a little poster and a small pamphlet for the exhibition. But they're like, maybe you should do a book. And yeah, it took us on a very long adventure.
I think to be very personal here, for me and Tim, it's actually to find courage to do a project like this is like a big step for us to actually, believe something you have something to say in the world and stuff. To have a solo exhibition and then also do a book and then to contact people you like admire and want to work with. It's like, yeah, you have to step up and be sure of what you want and stuff. So it's been a big exercise for us to actually be a bit more theoretical, like what do we want and which topic do we actually want to explore, and be open like that. And so it's been almost yeah, it was mid-pandemic, we were newly parents. I think the idea started almost 2 years ago, but we initiated the whole thing maybe, what is it, 1 year ago, where we actually had the brief ready to contact people, and from that. And luckily we also got we got a 3-year grant from the the Danish Art Foundation that of course helped us. We talked about all the commercial projects and how that has sustained our studio at the moment, but having the opportunity to actually have time and money to deep dive in a project like this has been very, an honor, or we were super thankful that we can do it. I don't know, did I answer your question?
I think you did, yeah, because it's such a like a brave and ambitious project just to take on by yourself and to involve all these people who have other expertises than yourself. We're sort of also doing the same thing here, like asking people who know more than us about something and then asking them to pitch in or to chip in. Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you for the presentation. I found it really interesting, especially the relationship with the tactile sensation and how brain works part. And I was wondering, because I can see that you two, I mean, I think I grew up in the same generation, so I can completely relate to the experience you shared. And the 3D that you make, it looks amazing. And I feel like it works really well because I know the material, like I know what you were moving around and how this object would move in this kind of physical, like a physics. But it's completely depending on my own experience in a way that I experienced when I was child. So I was wondering if you like how you see like the future of the generation, like how do like a next generation would see your work if they don't have this like a basic physical tactile experience of the real world, or I don't know like how you
Yeah,
see that.
very good question. Thank you. I think why it has been working for us to actually trigger some like feelings in people when watching our work is because of what I described with the synesthesia, is that we can actually evoke the sensation of touch and smell or something because we play with the people's previous experience of the knowledge of the material, or you know how this certain thing acts and feels like from the real world, and then you can apply it when you see our things. A good question is how the future would react is
Yeah, but as you say, it's like, and what we go into a little bit as well, like the senses doesn't work standalone. They're like layers of each other and reflects on each other. That's why it's like quite scary to think that now the hand is losing space in the brain, and that then of course also makes the visual world less interesting in the future because we don't have this haptic world to relate the pictures we see on. And it's the same with smell, taste, everything. So that's really like, yeah, gonna be a common goal for us and should be for everyone to like fight for a multi-sensory future to keep layering in all senses at the same time, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I have kind of, it became kind of a follow-up question now to that, because I was also interested in tactility, because your work looks so tactile, like some things look so soft, you really just want to touch them and you can't because most of it is just renderings. But then you also do these sculptures, and of course now the book also becomes this like surface where these things become tactile and physical, and it's clear that you've been working with like embossing and tactility in the cover. And I was just curious to hear a little bit more your thoughts on tactility in your work and how to put like create this like actual something you can touch with your hands through your digital work, and also like can you touch the sculptures you make, like is that allowed?
But yeah, we didn't show so much of that now, but we've since we started the practice, always having this 3D printers at home, basically. So we've like while we animating and doing stuff, we continuously 3D prints out like sculptures of that as well, and that's kind of become a little thing we've done now for a while. Yeah, and yeah, we can go. You're allowed to touch now.
yes. It's been now I lost my thread, but hopefully it comes back.
It's so these sculptures is like this tactile things, right? That you can touch and thing. But we try to play with the same thing as we do with the 3D animations, because there's still a new technique, the 3D printing. It has this like kind of alien, and if you print with some materials, they got like very weird reflections because of the way it's layering, and they become a little bit unreal, maybe even digital in that way. It's like a digital materiality, but actually physical. Sounds weird, but yeah.
Yeah, I actually don't have any. I lost what I was supposed to say.
With the book, for example, we really wanted it to be.
Yeah, it's actually quite invisible book if you're not in the correct light. But it is very tactile, and I think Chosk Studio also want to work with this almost like a solid 3D printed feature like we have in our other work, and that is mostly tactile rather than visual book in the outside, and then it's a very visual inside. And yeah.
Yes, there's a question over here.
Thank you. I don't know whether you know the work of Juhani Palasma and the eyes of the skin, for example, which is exactly over here, which is exactly about this subject matter of synesthesia and trying to come away from the idea of the visual, in a sense. I was wondering whether you would consider making kind of like a topology, and whether that topology might be also going back to the history of, you know, there are a lot of other artists that have been working on this. If you see the work of Alfonso Cuarón and the way he does camera work, that has an almost haptic feel. The same with the way that Tarkovsky uses time. So I was wondering whether you are seeing yourself in that tradition, and whether you would consider actually making a topology of how you work with the visuality of haptics, if you could say that.
I'm not sure I understand your question fully.
Well, I would like to know what is kind of like, what do you, is there kind of like a repository of things that you can do to make things more synesthetic, you know, in the way you work with the visual language?
Yeah, I mean, rather than focusing so much on the visual, we kind of want to do like these things at the same time. But now I understand the question. And like when rendering in 3D, we kind of do what you say here all the time, like finding, okay, how deep should the light go into this kind of material to kind of trigger some kind of recognition, because all materials it's not flat surfaces, it's the light goes in a little bit. And that's like one of these things that really takes the brain and thinking a material could be real. Like like these old paintings, often in old paintings there's always these waves where the sun is behind it, so it shines through the wave. That's like a classic motif, and that's also something that the brain recognizes from the real world. The material, the water suddenly becomes like something you can touch or like recognize better. So with working with the materiality and like an algorithmic and mathematic way, kind of is this direct from math to physical synapse or whatever. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's
That would be interesting if you could formalize that a little bit, that you could kind of like, that you could develop a repository of how to work with these kind of things.
And then that would mean for this time right now, right? Because as we talked, if our brains change, it's also gonna change how these things work, I guess. But that would be a nice, like how do you call it? Freeze time of a freeze of our time to kind of see where we are. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
Hello. Thanks for the presentation. It was really nice. You guy. Hello.
Where are you?
I'm here.
There. Okay.
I've been following your work for quite a while. You guys got me into working with 3D myself. So that's really nice. And it's been frustrating for sure. And what I was wondering is, like, I've worked a bit with multi-sensory 3D stuff as well. And what has always frustrated me quite a lot is that it's always like a 80% there. It never really fully hits, because you can 3D print in different materials, and there's always this limitation of how as you said, how the 3D print comes out, and it's never going to be like I mean, you activating all the different senses in an object is difficult. Like, is that ever something that frustrates you, or how do you work around that?
Do you mean like how much you even work is like it never gonna be better than a pottery glazed?
Exactly, because you don't smell the clay of the
Yeah, you mean
clay look-alike, or
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. It is always a limitation from where the technology is today. Like even in other medium like VR, AR. We used AR in our book. We were so frustrated. It's like it's so clunky, but we still wanted to add it because we have so much motion in a layer that actually could add something in 3D and stuff. So I think we also have the same feeling that you do something, and of course we will never, but we're not actually here, or our work is not supposed to replace the glazed pottery. We are just trying to see how the potential in digital fabrication and digital media and how that actually can add to the physical rather than replace the physical. So I think we just have to continue to explore our tools because tools have agency. The tools we use is, we are shaping the tools and the tools are shaping us. So how we use the 3D printers and 3D software will actually influence how the future will be. So I think by using it, even if it's clunky, you in your way will do your little local link that would change how we use it. And probably if you also open into using it in the wrong way and not how you are maybe what is was intended to, or what the was the most effective, or how what you
I think also that's a little like it doesn't never gonna feel like this pottery thing, and as you say, it only feels 80% there. I think it's the same with renderings many times then. But that's also based on a hierarchy of what material is a good material. It should be heavy. Like it's all those things that we built up in our brains. Like for example, as an art object, it always feels like always when someone lifts it, oh, okay, it was super light, and then it suddenly becomes worth much less for some reason. So that's also what we learn to think about. And as Annie says, our approach it is then to like use this machine in the wrong way, maybe not being super optimized, and make that way kind of make the result as unique as possible, maybe like because it's better than the pottery in its way, in being itself, if you know what I mean, like what it can do. Yeah, so understand your frustration, but there's also like a lot of possibilities within that last 20% of not reaching there. What is that? Can that be used instead to make it better? Maybe.
Okay. Thank you so much. You also touched upon something like these local links that, yeah, all of the challenges we're facing are like big and difficult to grasp, but you can like sort of start with a changing local links, which was also something Maya touched upon yesterday. And I think that's also a really nice note to end on. And you certainly like trying to change some local links with your book, trying new ways, and yeah. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for listening, and thank you.